Hello and good morning. Welcome to this YouTube live. Thank you so much for joining me. Whether you're watching live, whether you're watching the replay, I haven't done a live in a while. So I do like to come on here every now and then and do a live. It's a bit of a different vibe. So today's topic is beyond vocal exercises. How do we really create lasting change with our speaking voice? And I'm going to talk particularly today about three of the common sort of beliefs or judgments that we have, often unconsciously, that really hold ourselves back from creating that lasting change with our speaking voice. So stay tuned. If you have been struggling to try and create change, maybe you have worked with a coach, maybe you've done some public speaking training, maybe you've watched lots of videos on YouTube and you've been trying to teach yourself, or you've gone to a couple of workshops, done some courses. It really is, there's so much more to it than just some voice exercises, which is what I want to talk about today. However, before I get going, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I've just said subscribe, but anyway, you can never say it too many times. And yeah, please ask questions. Please leave a comment below if this resonates with you, or if you've got any questions more broadly. And then, of course, as always, all the links are below if you are interested in working with me privately, or I have got online courses and some other options as well. So the reason I wanted to do this live today is this is something that I would say almost every single private client I work with will say to me at some point on our journey together. Now, normally I work with clients across 8 months. And the reason for that is because vocal change takes time. It's a physical change, of course. So like going to the gym, you don't go to the gym twice a year and expect your body to change. It requires consistency. So there's that aspect. And for a lot of speakers, it's knowing what their voice needs, firstly. So what do I actually need to do for my voice to get it where I want to get it? But then it's also, how do I actually apply it? Because that is a big part of it. And that's why I think trying to do it yourself is so difficult. Trying to just follow YouTube videos, including my own, I have to be honest, because I give sometimes some exercises and they seem seemingly very easy on the surface, but it's so easy to do things not deliberately, but not correctly. So you're not getting the actual real benefit of the exercise. So there's the physical component to it. And so what I find then, and then obviously there's also the emotional component to voice training, which is what I'm going to really be talking about today, beyond the voice exercises. So what I find with pretty much every client I work with is they struggle to implement the techniques and tools into their everyday speaking. So we will work on the physical side of the voice. That's a big part of my work, the technical part. How do we actually produce sound? How do we actually get our voice out? So I have some specific tools and techniques and things that I share and I help clients implement in their voice. And what tends to happen is after this sort of initial weirdness, and I hear this all the time. I was talking to a lady earlier, and you know, when you start doing this, it feels a bit weird. It's different. It's not how you're used to using your voice. And so physically it might feel a little bit weird. So after you get over that initial kind of weirdness of the voice exercises, I find that people generally then start to enjoy them, and they become sort of quite surprised by the possibilities in their voice that they never knew existed, and how powerful their voice is, how clear their voice is, how much more resonance there is in their voice. So a lot of those voice exercises will really bring all of that out. And so they get very good at doing those privately, and they'll find a time at work, at home, and they'll do the exercises, and they'll get really good at doing exercises. I also see this with singers as well. We get very good at doing exercises. And then we think, it's magically going to just morph into our everyday speaking. And sadly, it doesn't work that way. So yes, of course, much like going to the gym, if you're trying to lose weight and you're going to the gym, yes, of course, if you go to the gym, you're going to build strength, you're going to build flexibility and stamina in your body. The same with your voice, of course. Not saying that that doesn't happen, but there's something so much deeper going on. So if that's all you do, you will feel like you struggle to implement in your day-to-day life. You will feel like you hit a wall, and you'll find it becomes quite challenging to actually implement this in your day-to-day speaking. So also, just on that as well, in terms of the physical side, we are creating new neuromuscular pathways, which is why it takes time as well. But this emotional piece is what I really want to talk about today, because I think that's also what makes my work unique and different to maybe your average voice coach out there, that's all about the physical, that's all about the training, that's all about the exercises. So again, I'm not saying that they aren't important. I'm not saying you don't need to do them. I'm just saying it's one part of the pie. And I would argue this other part of the pie is actually more important, at least initially. So your vocal habits are highly conditioned, and I've said this so many times before in my videos. We create vocal habits to help us fit in, to help us survive, to help us be accepted in the world. So a lot of them are not conscious. A lot of them you've adopted from family, from people around you, teachers, family, society, culture. You adopt them. And so if everyone in your family mumbles, the chances are you'll probably mumble as well. Unless you really hate it, and then you might go the other way. But you either adopt the habit or you reject the habit. And if you reject it, you're actually still energetically still connected to it. So you're not really free. So either way, it's very conditioned. So if you experience any kind of limitation, constriction, restriction in your voice in any way, you don't feel that freedom and that power and that clarity, conditioning is running the show. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're all conditioned, but we have to wake up to it and from it. And that's when we can really access the true full potential of our voice. And that's really what my work is about, helping you to reconnect to your true voice, to your authentic voice, to your natural voice, the way nature really intended it, to be free, to be open, to be generous, to be expressive. Just spend any time around toddlers and young children. They don't have a problem making any sounds. They don't have a problem with range, with dynamics. It's just, I'm just going to say and, express myself however I need to. So what you really need to understand is you cannot experience anything outside your own beliefs. Just in life in general, you can't experience anything outside your own beliefs. And the problem is a lot of our beliefs aren't even conscious. As I say, a lot of them aren't even our own. They're passed down through generations. They're passed down from our family. We don't even know we've adopted beliefs. And we're just swimming in this conditioning like a fish in water. We don't even know we're a fish in water because you don't know what you don't know. So we have to wake up from it, essentially. So meaning if you have unconscious beliefs around your voice, around expression, it's going to impact your voice 100%. You cannot get around it. And you might be able to manipulate it to some extent. And there might be certain situations where you feel you can manipulate your voice and get around certain things, but it's going to still be driving you. And what the point of my work is for you to truly be free, for you to integrate all parts of yourself. So you're not creating a vocal habit to avoid something else. You're not trying to do something to run away from a part of yourself. You are an integrated sort of whole person, and your voice is reflecting that. So there isn't the fear, there isn't the limitations around your voice. You just feel in your power to truly express yourself. And I said this to someone earlier this morning, from a place of love, not from a place of fear. A lot of our vocal habits are driven out of fear. They're very defensive. They're very controlled. They're very much about trying to manipulate and control people in the nicest possible way, we're all trying to get our needs met. And then we wonder why we struggle. So when we come from this true, authentic place, we are expressing ourselves from love, not from a defensive, fearful position. So I want to talk now about the 3 common beliefs / judgments that I think we all have on some level. And you might have all 3, you might have 1. You might also actually be like, no, I don't have these. However, if there is, as I say, any limitation or constriction in your voice, I guarantee one of these will be playing out somewhere. You just might be very unconscious to it. And that's okay. You know, this is all good. The first step is always awareness. The first step is always bringing awareness to our patterns, to our conditioning, so that we can change it. So the first one I want to talk about then is, and I should say each of these sort of brings its own challenges. However, the commonality with all of these 3 judgments / beliefs is that they're all about not standing out and not really being heard. And that's ultimately really our fear, is if I stand out too much, if I'm heard, I'm going to become visible. I'm opening myself up to criticism. I'm opening myself up to being ridiculed, to being shamed, to being abandoned, to being rejected. And that's all our deepest fear running through. So just to bear that in mind, there is this common theme that runs through them all. Okay, so the first one is around power. And I hear this from everyone, because one of the things that happens when you start to train your voice is your voice will become more powerful. And what people's belief / judgment is around power is power equals loud, or a powerful voice equals a loud voice. Now, that isn't actually true, and they are not mutually exclusive. So you can have a powerful voice, but it can be quiet. You can have a powerful voice and it can be loud. I think where the misunderstanding comes from is, for a lot of us, including myself, when we're learning about our voice, when we're training our voice, is in order to get power in our voice, we think we have to put a lot of welly behind it, a lot of energy behind it, a lot of volume behind it. But power for me is really about richness. It's about depth. It's about resonance in the voice. It's about really sort of owning your voice, owning the full power of your voice in both the literal and the figurative sense. So does that resonate with you? Do you think of power being loud? Now, if you then have a judgment around being loud, which a lot of people do, you are not going to allow yourself to have a powerful voice. So one of the things that I see a lot with private clients is, as I say, we start opening their voice up. The voice becomes really loud because they're now opening it up. There's no longer these blocks sort of stopping the sound. And now the voice to them appears really, really loud. And they get freaked out and they're like, no, I can't be this loud. And then they go out into the world and they're happy to do the loud exercises at home from the comfort of their own bedroom or kitchen. And then they go out into the world and they stuff the voice again. They go back to their old habits because they don't want to be perceived as loud. So first of all, I just want to, as I say, really just change your perception of power. Power can be loud or quiet. It doesn't have to be loud. It's more about the intensity, the richness, the depth, and the resonance in your voice. And that is automatically going to make it appear louder. However, you still have control over the volume of your voice. And that's something that you can learn how to access. Do I want to speak louder from a volume perspective or quieter? But the other part of this, which is a big part of my work, is also looking at why you make being loud wrong. So what's wrong with having a loud voice? Because whatever you reject and push into your shadow, which is the Jungian side of my work, you are not going to ever allow yourself to create anything close to that. So if you reject power in your voice because you perceive it means it's loud, then you're shutting down all of that potential in your voice. And then you're going to wonder why, when you go out into your everyday life, your voice just almost goes back. You feel like you've gone sort of backwards with vocal habits. So does that ring a bell? Let me know in the comments if you have that judgment around people that are loud. Do you judge people that have loud voices as annoying or show-offs or, just irritating? Fill in the blank. Because if you have that, then the chances are you're not going to allow power into your voice. And then, as I say, you're shutting down so much because it's so much beyond volume. So that's the first one. Powerful voice equals a loud voice. Now, the second one is clarity. So as I say, with voice coaching, what I'm going through are the 3 areas of your voice that will really change when you start to develop your voice. So one is your voice will become more powerful. The second is your voice will become clearer. You will have more intelligibility in your voice when you speak. So for a lot of people, and I see this quite a lot as well, particularly when they're told they need to speak clearer, the voice becomes more formal, more prissy, more precise, more kind of prim. And that's not really what we want with clarity. Again, if that's what you're going for, that's fine. But what I see with people often when they've been told they need to speak clearer is they start talking like this, and the voice becomes very formal and very precise and almost slightly robotic. And they've lost that softness, they've lost that fluidity in the voice. And so, and you see this a lot, and it's obviously, you sometimes know that someone's been told they need to articulate more. So the articulation becomes very harsh. And it's almost very clipped. There's a lot of abruptness in the voice. So we can, again, find clarity in the voice without it being harsh, without it being formal, without it being so abrupt and clipped. You can learn to connect the dots, so to speak, and find that fluidity in your voice while still having clarity. Now, that requires a bit more training and a bit more work, but it's 100% possible. So a lot of people then, when we start doing the work, the voice, as I say, generally goes the other way. So if they're someone that's always mumbled, we generally go to the opposite extreme. So I might get you to talk like this initially, because you're used to talking like this, and I've got to get you out of that where nothing is moving. But then people hear themselves and they're like, I don't want to speak like that in public. And so they just don't do anything. And then they just go back to mumbling in public. So one of the things also to remember is when you are training your voice. So if your voice is weak and quiet and we're training more power and strength in the voice, or whether your voice is mumbled and not very clear and we're training more clarity in the voice, we do have to go to an extreme. So if you're mumbled, we over-articulate. If your voice lacks power and strength, we go to the other extreme of developing strength in the voice. That's just part of training. But then you find that middle ground. But what people do is they freak out. They don't like the loudness, the volume, the power, the over-articulation now in their voice, and they just pull back and they run away. But really, there's this fear with clarity around being heard, around really owning the space, and around actually sharing their opinions and being understood. Because when you mumble, generally speaking, people don't really listen to you unless they have to listen to you. And they've got to, because we have to work really hard to listen to people that mumble. Equally, if the voice is very quiet and weak, we have to work really hard to hear what you're saying. So both require your audience to work hard. Now, generally, as I say, we don't want to work very hard to understand people. So unless we have to listen to you and get information from you, we probably aren't going to listen to you for very long. So, remember, it's just about, we go to an extreme, we find the middle ground, but we have to be prepared to go out into the world with this new habit and adopt this new habit. And it brings up all of this stuff around expression, around being heard, around being more visible, around now my opinions can really be out there for the world to hear. I can't hide behind my voice. I can't pretend I didn't say something because people didn't really hear me. Now it's just very, very clear what I've just said. So you have to really own your voice, as I said, figuratively and literally. And it's an emotional journey just as much as a physical journey. And I think that's what people don't really get. They think if I just do the exercises, my work is done. But it really is the icing, not the icing on the cake, but it's part of the journey, but it's not the whole journey. So do you resonate with clarity? Are you someone that's more on the side of mumbling and a lack of intelligibility in your voice? And do you feel uncomfortable when people can really hear you? Because the other part of being clearer when you speak is you have to open your mouth. And a lot of people feel very uncomfortable. It's very vulnerable opening my mouth. It feels more comfortable if I can just shut my mouth down. In the UK, we have this expression, stiff upper lip. And it's really this idea of holding back emotion and not expressing and showing emotion. So really, when our face is kind of frozen and we don't move anything, no one can really feel and hear what we actually think. It's a very, very clever way of the ego to hide our true feelings. So do either of those resonate? Power, clarity? Do you get triggered? Do you have a judgment around people that have a lot of clarity in their voice? Judgment could be good or bad. You might look at people and think, wow, that's amazing. Or you might look at people and think, oh my God, they're so annoying. I wish they'd just be a bit more relaxed when they speak. Their voice is so over the top and over articulating, and it just sounds so formal and I don't like it. So remember, whatever you judge in anyone else is pointing to something within you, and you are never going to allow that even remotely into your life. So if you have a judgment around clarity in any way, you won't allow it in. That's the whole premise of shadow work, which is what I sort of take my private clients through, because it's so important to really understand what's driving your voice. Okay, so the final one is a big one as well, and they're all big, they're all important. And this is the third aspect of the third sort of judgment belief that we have, but it's also a big part of what happens to your voice when you train your voice. It will become more expressive. So this number 3 is expression. So what a lot of people will say to me when we start to work on expression, so there's more animation, there's more melody, the voice is just sounding more engaging and more interesting, they feel it sounds too performative. They feel it sounds too theatrical and too over the top, because they're used to speaking very monotone. They're used to their voice being quite dull and boring to listen to, kind of flat. The pitch is maybe quite low or very high, but it doesn't really move. There's not a lot of intonation. There's not a lot of energy in the voice. It's just very low energy, very flat, very monotone. So for them then, when we come to do exercises to encourage and access more animation and melody in the voice, again, they're happy to do it at home in their exercises. I give them some exercises to do and they do them great. And then they say to me, yeah, but I don't seem to be able to do this when I'm actually going out into the world. Then my voice shuts down again. Then I go back to a monotone voice, a sort of a dull kind of boring sounding voice. And again, coming back to our judgment. So a lot of people have, particularly speakers, they really fear being perceived as a performer. And one of the things about being a performer is there is more animation, there is more energy, there is more melody in the voice. You think even very literally as a singer, and I'm a singer, we sing melodies. And as a speaker, you are an instrument as well. But as a speaker, on some level, we think being a performer is bad. So I can't be a performer. That's a bad thing. Singers can be a performer, but I can't be a performer. So then we go out into the world And even though we've got really good at doing all these exercises for melody and animation, the voice just goes back to its normal way of speaking because we have a judgment around being a performer, being more theatrical. Now, again, as I said on the others, yes, when we practice, we might go to an extreme, but you don't have to go out into the world in that extreme when you're speaking, but you do have to leave your comfort zone. You can't just keep doing what you're doing in your normal day-to-day speaking. You have to bring some of what you're doing in your voice exercises at home into your day-to-day speaking. And that is uncomfortable. That is you're bumping up against all of this internal resistance, all of this shadow within you of what happens if people perceive I'm a performer, but I'm not a performer. I'm just standing here giving a presentation or interviewing or doing a podcast. But it's really, you've got to look at what is your fear about that? What's your judgment around being a performer? And a lot of it is around too much attention, too much visibility. What will people think? Am I too over the top? Am I too much? Is this resonating? It's so common. But if you have a judgment around being a performer or more theatrical, you are not going to allow that expression into your speaking voice. You can do all the exercises in the world at home, and then you'll go back into your day-to-day speaking and you'll just keep doing the same thing. So where do you feel, if any, I presume if you're watching this video, you aren't entirely satisfied with where your voice is at. So where do you feel that you hold your voice back? Is it around power and strength in the voice? Is it around clarity and being intelligible and being really clearly understood? Or is it around expression and maybe your voice sounds very sort of monotone and boring? And there's maybe a lack of energy as well. It's just like we want to put a firework behind you to kind of wake you up. It's almost like we need to put the light in the lighthouse, as one of the ladies I follow on YouTube always says. It's like, put the light in the lighthouse. We need to kind of wake up. And then that immediately impacts the voice. So as I say, just to remind you, you have to practice to an extreme, but then you also have to integrate the opposite. So there's a good chance if you mumble that you have rejected clarity. There's a good chance if you speak very quietly, if you've rejected power. There's a good chance if your voice is monotone that you've rejected expression, that you've rejected being a performer in some way. But from a Jungian perspective, we are all everything, and it's really an integration. So we never want to reject anything, because whatever you reject is not going anywhere. You might be able to push it away to some extent, but it's still driving you. And it takes a lot of psychological energy if you're pushing it away. So just start to pay attention. So, the shadow part of this is massive. So which one of these do you most resonate with? And then start to sort of think about, if I was unafraid to be perceived as powerful, as more expressive, as having a clearer voice, what would actually open up for me? But also start to think about, what are my judgments around people that I perceive to have a powerful voice, a clear voice, an expressive voice? And just start to open it up, because I promise you, vocal exercises will only take you so far. I've been doing this for a very long time. I've done literally thousands of hours of private voice training myself over the years, as well as working with hundreds of clients. And, you just start to see patterns in humans. We all have an ego. We're all trying to survive, but at some point we have to wake up from survival. So all of these things, as I said at the beginning, are really around fearing standing out, fearing being heard, fearing owning our own voice. And that is what really my work is all about. But it's a very, very limiting place to live from. And you can't actually be creative from that place, and you can't freely share yourself from that place. And that's really what we're here to do, is share ourselves, share our gifts, our talents, share our opinions, our thoughts, our feelings. But if we've always got sort of one foot on the brake and one foot on the accelerator, we're not in a very creative place. We're actually in a very survivalist place. So that's really the point of this work. Now, I do have on Udemy an online course, Free Your Mind, Free Your Voice. That would be the cheapest way right now if you wanted to sort of start to explore this in yourself. It's a self-paced course. The price varies because Udemy has this kind of price fluctuation thing going on. I don't quite understand it. But anyway, the point is, it depends on what day of the week you go in, depending on what you can get it for. But that would be a good place to start. And I think the cheapest you can get that for is £10, that course, which is a bargain. But if you are interested in private voice coaching, my Speak with Impact private voice coaching program goes into this in so much more depth. And it's tailored to you, it's tailored to your voice. It's mind-blowing and it's transformational, because what I hope you start to see is your voice is this amazing tool that can reveal so much about what's really going on within, things that you might have previously just ignored, pushed away, thought that's got nothing to do with me. But we really start to see our voice is this incredible tool for understanding ourselves on a much, much deeper level. And when you understand yourself on a much deeper level, you are then really free to create. You are really free to step into whatever it is you want to do, to own your voice, it doesn't matter what it is actually you want to do, because we all need our voice. And whether it's talking to friends and family, whether it's professionally, you need your voice and you take it with you everywhere you go. So it's profound, deep work. It's looking at the shadow. It's looking at your voice. What is my voice expressing? What am I running away from? What am I hiding from? And I guarantee these things today, whether it's expression, whether it's power, whether it's clarity, there will be things that are connected to that are impacting every area of your life. How we do one thing is how we do everything. It's just in some areas of our life, it's easier to see, you know. So people will often say to me at work, they struggle to be assertive, but at home it's easier. But it's just because you're a bit more comfortable at home. But I guarantee you're still not actually being really authentic at home. There's still a break on in some way. So yes, one area might help you see it, you know, in flashing lights, but it's still there. It's still driving you. So this is the power of this work. It is so transformational. It really just helps you to understand yourself in a much deeper way. So then you're really free to express yourself and communicate from your heart, from a place of love, versus from a place of fear and defensiveness, which is where most of our habits are really driven from. So again, not to blame yourself, but just to really understand that our vocal habits are very conditioned, which means it's all about survival. It's all about protection, defense, and control. And you know, you can't create from that place. You're going to really struggle in life. So see your voice as this incredible tool for transformation of your life. So if you are interested, you can book a 30-minute voice discovery strategy call. Any fees you pay would be credited towards the program. The reason I charge a fee is I just want to make sure I'm only talking to people that are actually serious about this. So that doesn't mean you have to work with me. It's just I want to make sure that I'm really talking to people that are ready, and they're really wanting the conversation to see if it's the right fit, versus I'm not going to try and persuade you to do anything. You have to be ready for it and you have to be willing to throw yourself into it. So I can't do that for you. So that's the reason I charge for the consult, just so I'm not sort of wasting my time talking to people that aren't actually ready or ever going to invest in themselves. So if you are interested, all the links are below. I would love to help you, or you can send me a message through my website, anuska-taylor.com. And any questions from today's video, comment below. And thank you so much for watching. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much. And I will see you next week.